We are in a renaissance of deck creation in the Lenormand, Tarot, and Oracle worlds right now. And I think this is something to celebrate. I'm so happy that there are so many new decks coming into the world right now. But I'm a self-proclaimed deck snob. What I mean by that is I really only read with a couple of decks for myself and for clients. Inside this video, I'm going to share with you my 4 favorite Lenormand decks and why they are my favorite. We will also do a flip through so you can get a sense of each deck's essence and aesthetic to see if it's for you. If you're a beginner, I'm also going to share which decks are the most beginner friendly so you can decide if the deck would fit into your blooming practice. I do want to say though that even if a deck isn't for beginners, but you're really attracted to it and you're motivated to pick up that deck and play with it, then do it. If you're having fun with the deck, then that's truly what matters in my opinion, because if you're having fun with it, you're more likely to pick it up more and you're more likely to spend more time with it, hence making you a better reader. So I'm going to go chronologically through these 4 decks of when I received them and started working with them. So that's the order I'm going in. I do have one very favorite that I will share with you. You probably already know what it is if you spent time with me on this channel or on my website, but I will state that. But I love all of these decks for different reasons, and I can't wait to share them with you. Let's get into it with deck number 1. This is the very first Lenormand deck that I played with when I was 12 years old. That is Titania's fortune cards. They look like this on the back and they are all over my website. Why did I buy this deck? Well, because I was 12 years old and it was gold and shiny on the shelf at Borders Books. I thought I was buying a tarot deck, but I wasn't. I ended up buying a Lenormand deck, and since my mom's a tarot reader, I thought she could help teach me. But when she saw these cards, she said, I have no idea what this deck is. You are on your own. Let's do a flip through of this deck so you can get a sense of what it's like. So this is the book that it comes with. And this is where the cards would sit, and it has like a little paper holder to keep them in there. And you can see it's just like glued. You can see the remnants of the glue afterwards. And as you look through this book, it's really interesting because most of it is not how we read Lenormand in the typical sense. And what I mean by that is if you are searching for Lenormand meanings, techniques, things like that online, you're going to find differentiations between teachers, of course, but there's a lot of interpretations in here that I haven't seen anyone else have those same attributions. So that's just something to keep in mind if you do get this deck in this book. Now, I feel like I am in a unique situation here because this is the deck and book that I learned on to start with, but I no longer use a lot of the methods taught in this book. Rana George is my mentor, and so I use her book and her teachings. But when I use this exclusively, I did get a lot of really great readings from this, really accurate readings using this, and it's because I was so consistent, right? I didn't have internet, I didn't use other things at this time. So because of that, I did get really great results from using this deck. However, when I wanted to level up my skills, when I wanted to get a little bit more complicated with the types of readings I was doing, I found it hard to extend past this. That's what I mean by I'm in a unique situation for reviewing this, is because I truly love this deck because it was my first one, but I have to say I don't really recommend it for beginners, and I think that there are better decks out there for beginners, better books out there for beginners, but this deck is beautiful and I absolutely still love using it in my daily draws reading with clients and grand tableaus, and people tend to respond really well to this deck. So I can't wait to show you the cards. So let's go ahead and flip through the deck, but I just want to point out here too that as we're just looking at this first card, the Rider, there's no number and there's no playing card insert. So in a standard Lenormand deck, you'll typically have a number associated with each card in the top corner, and you'll also have a playing card insert here. Now, I think the number is pretty important to have, and that has mostly to do with the grand tableau when you get into that, but it's not 100% necessary to read. I also don't think the playing card insert is necessary to read, and I think it confuses a lot of beginners, especially when they focus on the playing card inserts. So I'm somebody, since I learned on this deck, that I don't really use the playing card inserts, which I'll show you in other decks that I'm going to review for you here too. But I don't read with them because I learned on this deck, right? And what I did instead is learn the card essence. And I think that that is a really helpful way to learn to read Lenormand, is to focus on the essence of each card rather than focusing on the technical, aspects of it. That being said, a lot of people do read with playing card associations and get great results with that. And I do use the playing card inserts if I'm trying to predict the gender of a baby. But other than that, I don't think that those things really enhance your reading in a significant way, so I'm not too worried about it. For me, it's not really a con. So one thing I love about this deck is how super simple it is. So I'm just going to flip through so you can get a sense of each card. I love that it's just a single image, and that actually, I think, worked to my benefit when I was learning, because there's not a lot of extras here. It's just the image highlighted, like it has that bright background on it. I also love how vibrant these cards are, and I find that when I read these with clients respond really well to these cards. They get it right away. It makes sense. It's clear. It's beautiful. And that's definitely in the pro camp, is how simple these cards are and how beautiful and bright they are. They're also very attention grabbing. It's probably like the number one question asked on my website is, what are those cards? And I love them because of that. I think they're very approachable, and I love how simple they are. That being said, there's definitely some cards that I don't love how they're portrayed. So this is one here. So this is supposed to be the birds, and in the book it talks about how the birds is a warning. And I don't really see the birds quite in that way. I like to see multiple birds on a card, typically, because birds is usually about communication, conversation, things like that. But when you have the bird, just a bird here, it does look ominous, like they're saying, like a warning, and I don't tend to see the bird that way, or the birds that way. And in a lot of books too, you'll see multiple birds on a card or in the book talking about its interpretation, because it can mean like a couple. We kind of lose that meaning here with just the one bird. We have child, fox, bear, and then again with the star here, we only have one star. When I was learning, I missed the nuance of the essence of the star card as spreading, or something spreading out. With this particular deck, it's not spreading, we just have one. So it does kind of signify that hope, the hope meaning of the card. I can get future from this, but I like having multiple stars on a card. So we have stork, dog, tower, garden, and then here's the mountain. I think this is a puny mountain. I would like a stronger mountain there. And then also probably my biggest complaint about this deck is the Crossroads card. I don't believe it talks about decisions in the book when it comes to Crossroads, and I think that that's one of the main essences of this card. So this one is super confusing to folks who are learning on it. It was really confusing to me when I started. So I really wish this was split apart. And we have mice. I would like multiple mice on there, but I guess one's fine for that interpretation. And then we have the man and woman cards. We just have one of each. I like now in newer decks, we tend to have more than 2 people cards, and that's for good reason. In the grand tableau, sometimes you have more people you're working with, or if you have a situation going on, it's helpful to have more than just 2 people, but we do have just 2 standard people cards. And then this is the lilies. It's kind of hard to tell what this one is. It is a lily, but I think that could be clearer. I love the sun and moon cards though so much. I think they're so pretty. I also love this key card. It just is so bold and bright and beautiful. For fish, I would like multiple fish on there to show abundance, plenty, many. Love the anchor card. And then we have the standard cross. So as we talked about with the pros, I love how beautiful this deck is. I feel like I get it really quickly. The symbolism makes a lot of sense to me. I think that it's eye-catching, it grabs attention, it's fun. But on the con side, we don't have playing card inserts, we don't have the number on it either, and there are some cards that can be pretty confusing, especially if you are a beginner. The book is also very beautiful, as we talked about. I love the full color images in the book, but I also feel like the book can be a little bit confusing, and I feel like there could be more information, and I feel like the space could be better spent here. So all in all, this is one of my favorite decks because it was what I learned on, and I'm very sentimental about it. But if you're a beginner, this can be a pretty confusing deck to learn on, but if you are into the artwork, you're into this deck, then get it. I think it's a really pretty, and also this is probably a client favorite. Clients always get excited when I pull these out, and I can tell that there's something about the images that just speaks to them. So pros, cons with this deck, but honestly, it is really beautiful and I love it. Deck number 2 is my all-time favorite Lenormand deck, and that is the Rana George Lenormand, to no surprise of anybody who has watched this channel or been on my website. Now, full disclaimer, Rana George is my friend and mentor. She really helped me become the professional reader that I am now, and so I use her deck pretty much exclusively for clients. I do use some of the other decks that I will mention here in certain circumstances, but I truly, truly love this deck, and you can just feel Rana's essence imparted throughout. We have the Rana George Lenormand, and the artwork is by Callie French. I've had the privilege of meeting Callie French too, and she's so lovely. I actually have the print of the Incense Burner card, which is a bonus card in this deck. So the deck comes in a box like this. It's a pretty sturdy box, and it has a pretty good closure there, and the cards would sit in there like this. And then we have a decent sized book that comes with it as well. It's not a full color book, but again, it's fitting in here. It's pretty portable. So I like the size of this, and I like the size of the cards as they come out here. Inside the book, I find that it's really helpful. I like that she has a quote to start out. She usually has about 2 quotes for each one about each card, and it gives you a sense of the essence of the card, which I think is the most important thing when it comes to reading. Then she also has example spreads in here too, which I think is really helpful if you're learning. This deck is also very much inspired by Lebanon, which is where Rana George is from. So it just kind of has this Lebanese influence throughout. And I like that she has her own personal associations and also associations with Lebanon itself. So you can get a sense of why each emblem was picked for these cards, and you get a sense of her own personal story. So let's look through this deck. First of all, look how beautiful that is. Like I mentioned, I like gold shiny things. So the fact that this is gold and shiny, I just love it. And it's the Hand of Fatima, so it's just so beautiful. And you can just feel this deck is infused with magic. So let's go ahead and get into it here. So we have Rider, and as I mentioned in the previous one, if you haven't seen a Lenormand deck before, this is what I mean by the number. This is card number 1, and then here's the playing card insert. So you kind of get the best of all worlds here. I also find that the imagery is very clear on these cards. Even though there's a whole scene going on behind each of these cards, what I love about it is that you still are very clear on what this card is. This is the Rider. So I'll just go ahead and flip through here. I also love that it's shiny on this side too. So not only are we getting the shine here, we're getting the shine here. And in terms of how this deck has held up over the years, I have 2 of these. I read with this deck daily for years, and I just now had to retire it after about 5 years of daily use, and I still actually could use that deck, but I got a new one to read with clients, and I find that it does hold up pretty well. It's a pretty thick stock here, but it still has some give to it. And there's the stars, what I mean by it being spread out. You can tell it's the stars, and you can get that message of spreading. And there's the garden card. There's a formidable mountain. That's kind of what I was looking for there with the mountain card. Crossroads is very clear what it is. Multiple mice. And then for the people cards, we get 4 people cards, which I love. We need more people cards in decks. That being said, I would say my one con of this deck is that we don't have any non-binary cards. I have a lot of non-binary clients, so I really like to have non-binary cards. That's my only con, really, of this deck. I love having the 4 people cards, though. That makes it very easy when you have complex situations with multiple people involved. And there's the lilies, very clear what it is. And then there's the cross, and then now we're going to get into the bonus cards that are within the Rana George Lenormand. And the reason, people have complex feelings about bonus cards. These cards solve problems that we have in Lenormand as a modern reader. So, for example, the cross kind of, in addition to being like burden, responsibilities, things like that, it can also mean like religion, spirituality, things like that. But I find, if you don't have positive associations with crosses, like a lot of us don't in society today, this makes it really hard to use this as our spirituality card. So Rana solves that with this, and Cali French too, but they solve this with this spirit card. And this card has been a game changer in readings for me. One of the main reasons why is because it can be spirituality, and it also can highlight areas of importance and what's happening on the spiritual plane. And the longer that I'm a reader, no matter what's going on, no matter how mundane it is, everything relates to what's happening on the spiritual plane. And I find that the addition of this card is really helpful in knowing how this relates to the spiritual plane. And sometimes it'll point to patterns that are occurring, and those patterns are there for spiritual development. The other thing about the spirit card is it's very customizable to each diviner who's using this deck. So my way of working with the spirit card might be different from yours, and she designed it that way intentionally. Another card we have here for the bonus is the Incense Burner. This card, she refers to as scent a lot of times, how a smell can be really strong, but it dissipates quickly, right? So she describes this card as something that's important, but maybe doesn't last a long time. So if you get this in a love reading, then that's what this could represent. Okay, you're going to have something important with this person, but it might not last a long time. I also really pay attention to the eye here in the background. And what I've noticed with the Incense Burner is that this can mean cleansing and seeing things clearly over time, depending on the surrounding cards. Sometimes it means things are obscured. It kind of reminds me of the clouds, but not as negative context. So I get this a lot of times for seeing something for how it truly is, seeing something really clearly. I also get this as a perspective shift. This card has been really helpful. All of these bonus cards are actually really helpful. Another example is we have the bed card. So this can represent comfort or sex, intimacy, things like that. And this frees up that whole debate about whether we should use the whip card or the lilies card as sex, when really we can just use the bed card and solve that whole problem right there. I also read this as comfort zone in like a non-intimacy related reading. And then finally we have the market card, which can mean work. It can also mean like a marketplace and transactions, things like that. So this can just be a true work card, and it also solves that problem of, should I use the anchor for work? Should I use the fox for work? You can just use the market card. So this deck has a lot of pros, and this is why it is my all-time favorite deck. The main reason for that is because of how beautiful it is. I want to use it. I want to grab it. I love the size of these cards. They easily fit on a table for a grand tableau. I love the imagery. I think it's clear. I think this is a great deck for beginners because I think that it's very clear what each card represents, and I think that's the most important attribute for beginners. I also think a lot of people will want to use this deck. The other thing I would say with this too is that we do have the 4 people cards, and we have those bonus cards which you can put in, you can leave out. It solves a lot of problems for people. My only con to this deck is that I would like non-binary people cards. Other than that, I think this is a pretty flawless deck, and I highly recommend it. It's also at a very affordable price point too. This deck just has it going on. I know I'm a little biased because Rana is my friend and mentor, but I don't care. I think this deck is really great. Deck number 3 is the Sawyer's Lenormand by the wonderful Jamie Sawyer herself. Now, Jamie Sawyer is a friend of mine as well. I've met her at the Northwest Tarot Symposium multiple times, and she is just truly a gem of a human being, and she has such fabulous artwork. I had borrowed a deck from a friend for a long time, and I finally picked this deck up at the last Northwest Tarot Symposium, but I have been using it for quite a while. I love Jamie's artistic style. She is also a tattoo artist, and that comes across in her artwork on her decks. The Sawyer's Lenormand, I really like the back here. So you have like the different moon phases and also different symbols here. And why I love this deck, one of the main reasons is it's very clear what it is because it says it here. So this is the writer, but Jamie's also not afraid to take things into the modern world. And I think that that is really what we need with Lenormand. I think bringing things into modernization helps more people find it and connect with it. So I do love her decks. And I also like that they're inspired by her work in the tattoo world. You can get a sense of that here, and I think it's just really artistic and beautiful, and I really like picking these up for my daily draws especially. It just brings a sense of levity and beauty to my daily draws. So as we flip through here, you'll see that each one has this really cool border. We have the number here, but we do not have the playing card inserts. So if you're somebody who reads with playing card inserts, that would be a con for you. It's not a con for me. I don't really read with them except in gender reveal things, which I already have kind of complex feelings about anyway, so not a big con for me. So as you flip through, you can just see her own take on it, and I really like the tattoo inspired words here. Now you'll notice I didn't really talk about the book because I don't even know if it comes with a little white book with it. I can't remember because I don't have the box anymore. I just keep it in like a little bag, but that's typical for me. I'm actually kind of surprised I still have the Rana George and the Titania's Fortune cards because I don't usually keep the box that it comes in. For the child here, we don't have an actual child on the card but we have child-related things, so still very clear what it is. And I love this fox card. I think it's so cute. We have a panda. We don't usually see a panda on bear cards, so I like that. Stars here, you still get the sense, a little bit of a sense of spreading here. And you do have that star in the center though for the hope and future aspect. And I think that this is actually Jamie's dog that's on the front here, and it's so cute. I love it. I love this tower. You can tell what it is so quickly, but it's so artistic. I always kind of like it when the mice are nibbling at something, but I like that there's multiple mice here because that does kind of get more into the essence of the mice for me. So here we are going with the people cards. We're starting to hit those here. We have gentleman, lady, gentleman. And I really like these because it's an animal that's on the card here. I always like having non-binary. I know I sound like a broken record, but I really do like having non-binary people cards in here. But I do really like these people cards, and I appreciate that we have multiple people cards. We don't just have two, and that makes it really easy for charging and for working with complex situations. I really like this moon card. I always like the moon cards in decks. It's always one of my favorites. Multiple fish here. I really like having the multiples when it comes to the fish card. And we don't have any bonus cards aside from the 2 extra people cards, but I'm actually fine with that. I don't think most decks need them, and I think the time to add in bonus cards is when you have a use and a utility for them. So I really like this deck because of how beautiful it is. I really like the tattoo, especially in like the lettering here. I really like that influence on this deck. It just screams Jamie as you read through it. And I think it's a very clear deck. I think this actually isn't a bad deck for beginners. I think this is a pretty good deck for beginners. I think it's really clear. I think we can tell what it is. The only thing though, if you are a beginner and you get distracted easily, there are kind of extra things on these cards, but I don't think it's too distracting. I think beginners can look at this and know what it is without a lot of confusion. So I think this is actually a good beginner deck. I don't think that you get a pretty robust book that comes with it, so you'll want to make sure that you have learning resources, whether you're taking, an online course or you have a book. You'll want to make sure to have that with this deck since it doesn't come with it automatically. And last but not least, I really love the Black Salt Lenormand, which is a pretty recent deck that came out, and this is by Logan Townsend. Logan and I became internet friends a while ago. We were trying to figure out how we even became friends. We couldn't remember, but I really just love his approach to Lenormand. I really love his energy, and that comes through in his deck. He has a very playful style in his artwork, and it makes me want to pick up these cards. It comes in this really great carrying case. I think it's magnetic here. And I still keep it. I keep the cards in here because I really like this little carrying case that it comes in. And it does come with a little booklet that has some key words on it. So if you need just a quick keyword reference guide, you have it here. It doesn't have an extensive book, but you do get this with the deck. Okay, we're starting to see a theme with shiny things in decks that I really like because I like how shiny it is. Logan also created the pink sugar Lenormand too, so if you're into more of, pink and pretty aesthetic, then that deck's going to be for you. I'm just kind of a dark child here, so I like the darker deck, so I went with the black salt. But I love the holographic. It just brings me back to like Pokemon era or something. I just really like it. So I'll go ahead and flip through this deck. So this way. One thing I really like about this deck is the holographic nature of it, but also you get both things. So you get the playing card insert, and then you also get the number. I like that the playing card insert's just at the top and it's really quick. I find it's not very distracting there. I actually don't really like it as much when we have the full insert here because I like the image to shine through. So that's just my personal preference. Everyone's going to be different with that. So instead of the rider, we have the skater here. And that's one thing that I like about Logan's decks is that he is not afraid to take things into the modern world, right? Jamie wasn't either. As you saw, the rider was on a motorcycle here. And then here we have the skater, so on some skates. So this one's a little different. I think in terms of beginner friendliness of this deck, this one might be slightly tricky for some beginners, but also it carries things into the modern world. So I think that for some people, they could find this more helpful for themselves. And I think for others, they may want something that's slightly more traditional. So that's just going to totally depend on your taste. I really enjoy this deck and I think it's really fun. So we have the skater for the rider. And I'll just scroll through these here. For the house, we have like a hearth. So I really get like a home feeling from this one, which is interesting, but it's still pretty clear what it is. And that's another thing I like about this deck is that it does just kind of have that main single image on it. So it's pretty clear what each one is. And one thing I really like about this deck too is that if you're a millennial, especially, we found out we're the same age. If you're a millennial, then this deck is like peak nostalgia. You have the snake game. I remember like playing this on like my mom's cell phone when, on like a Nokia or something, right? And then this is the bouquet. This one's kind of interesting because you have the bulb here. So that's a slightly different interpretation here. I kind of like having just like a plain bouquet on it, but again, it says what it is here, so it's very, very clear, so you're not going to be confused as you're flipping through it. And this is something as well that's a little bit different. So instead of using a traditional whip card, instead he gives you a choice, which I like a lot. I like having a choose your own adventure baked into this. So we have the whip, like whipped cream, and then we also have a duster. And I think that this brings a playful quality into this deck, which is one of the pros of this. I feel like sometimes our daily draws or like readings with Lenormand can get heavy if if we don't remember the whole idea of non-duality and having fun. And I think this deck just brings fun back into it. So here you can use the whip. If you're using the whip as your sex card, this is kind of like tongue-in-cheek and fun, right? To have strawberry with whipped cream on it, kind of hints at like sexy time. And then you also have the duster here. And so this kind of takes away some of the darker, you know, cultural connotations that we can see with a whip card and the historical context of that. We just kind of take that out of it and have duster, something that's repetitive. You know, the whip can mean cleaning a lot of times. So I like this. I think that this is really fun. And also you could use both if you wanted in your reading. If you're going to talk about sex, right, then you can use the whip, and then you can also keep the duster in there to represent something else. So I like the options that we have there. We have birds. For the child, we have a Game Boy. I love it. Comment if you had a Game Boy. I had 2 different Game Boys. I had Game Boy Color and regular Game Boy, and I was obsessed. Teddy bear. For the star, we just have 1 star. I keep mentioning I like having multiple stars, but we're very clear on what it is. We have a cat tower for the tower. This is what I mean by it's playful, right? And here we're starting to get into person cards. We have non-binary person cards, y'all. I love it. This is so helpful. And I use this deck when I have non-binary clients because it helps to keep the reading as inclusive as possible. I love that we have 4 cards here, just like A+ here, A+. I like the little bunny on the moon. It's so cute. And then here we have another choice here. So we have the cross, and these are like band-aids here because this can mean like grief and pain and things like that. So we can get that connotation. Then we also have the burden card with a Tamagotchi, which I feel like that's just like you had to be there right? When Tamagotchis came out. So I like that we have a choice here of which one we use. And I tend to like to use the burden one with the Tamagotchi because I don't like having a cross. Even though it's traditional in Lenormand, I prefer to not use it. So I appreciate that we have a different alternative here, especially with this Tamagotchi. It's just so fun. This deck, I feel like the pros of it are that it's just super fun. It's nostalgic. It makes me want to pick up this deck and play with it and have fun. I use this a lot for my daily draws. And I feel like some of the other pros of it is that we get some choices in here of which cards we resonate with more. We have 4 people cards. Really, really good. I feel like he really thought through this. And I like that it's you know, peak nostalgia for millennials. I like that it's shiny if we're going there. We have playing card inserts. We have the number on it. I think the downside is that, and I don't know if you really want to call this a con, but we have things like the skater. So this can be slightly confusing to new folks. But I think that if you have a good book that you're reading with it, I don't think it'll be too confusing for you. I do think that this is beginner approved. So there they are, my 4 favorite Lenormand decks. I would love to know which of these decks you like. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. And also remember, if you would like to learn Lenormand, I do have a free Lenormand mini course, which you can find at emilyrosedivination.com/mini course. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you next time.